Hello again. I am unbelievably excited to talk to you about um, uh, a drum that I have been working on. I forgot something here. Hold on. Don't move. Be right back. Okay. Um, I picked up. How should I start this? It's about a snare drum called a Rogers Big R, and Rogers is, I don't even know where to begin with this. Rogers is such an important company in drum evolution, drum innovation. Rogers is a company that was started, I guess, in the late 1900s, 1849, I think. Um, and Since then, it's changed hands several times, like a lot of companies, like Camco, Um, but Rogers is one of those unsung heroes in drums. Um, Here, this is I got so much stuff to show you. This is going to be a fairly large video. I'm doing this in several videos, so wait until the end of this video and you'll see the final product. So anyway, I picked up a Big R Rogers shell. I wanted to get a deep military grade-ish snare drum, and I've never had one in wood. I used to play them in marching bands, but I've never had one in wood that was appropriate for the drum set. If you have a huge marching drum, there's a lot of there's a lot of things that you have to deal with taking it to the gig and stuff, and it's an extra large, big thing like this. So I was looking around for what would be in my budget, and what I could do during this period, this confinement period. And I found one, and it's awesome. The key thing is, though, I wanted it to be a 14-inch by at least 8, 14 by 8, and I found one 14 by 10. 14 by 10-inch Rogers Big R. Unbelievable. So before I show you the shell, I want to talk to you about the lugs. They're super important. When Rogers, I guess the first Rogers lugs were, the way they made them. Here's the one, beaver tail. Yes, right. So it looks like that. Now, the first lugs were much like the sling-along ones. They would come around and bend down instead of being tapered like this. So they would come like this and go like that. And what happened on those early Rogers kits is, after a while, coming around like this, the butt end right here would bend in and or out. I'm sorry, it would bend out. So it would eventually break over tension and all that kind of stuff. So they introduced this one in the 70s. I want to say 75, but because the Big R came out in 1975, and this is the introduction of the beaver tail lug. And I have a ton of these I had to take them off the drum to work on the shell. But there's a lot of cool stuff about this lug, and I'm used to Premier Janista lugs, which I absolutely love. The huge teardrop style lugs, and the thickness of the metal is really impeccable. It's unbelievably sturdy. It lasts forever. These ones, they feel light. They're not as heavy as the Janista Premier lugs, the teardrops. And because they're old, they have a lot of pitting on them, considerably. I mean, you can kind of see, you see the pitting there, right? The chrome is starting to come off. Still shiny, but The chrome is starting to come off. Some are better than others. And so when I saw that, I was like, wow, I don't know how, because lugs are very, very important with drums. When you are, if you buy an entry-level kit, a lot of people don't understand this until you start working on drums. The lugs, all the metal on a drum is it's really important, and it raises the value of the drum a lot. A lot of people see the wood and they go, oh wow, that's beautiful, but actually the lugs, the metal, the screws, the nuts and bolts, the gauges, the thickness of the metal, incredibly, it raises the price of the drum. So this one, even though there's the pitting there, like the chrome is starting to peel off a little bit, it's not that big of a deal, because when you see the size, the gauge of the metal, see, that's inside. There's nothing, I didn't take anything out, that's what it looks like inside. You notice that the metal, the weight, the thickness of it is strong. I can't, on the cheap ones, you can pinch this and you can actually feel it start to deform in your hand. This one will not do that. And the fact that it's the beaver tail thing here now means that it won't bend over time from tension. So this is the famous beaver tail lug, right? Again, you can see it now. There's a few interesting things about this. First of all, on the Janissa drum lug, inside here, there's a piece of plastic right there, and it's very important. You have either a piece of plastic right there stuck there, or other drums, there's a spring in there. Why? Because when you're tuning the lug, the head, let's say you pull out the screw, the swivel nut right there. This is called a swivel nut. This piece, see, and the butt end of it is inside. There's that square piece right there. Okay, now when I turn it like this, it doesn't fall into the lug. It doesn't go in there. Why? Because Rogers came up with this cool idea back in a long time ago in the 70s. They put a little, I have to do it like this, you can see, there's a little ring on the swivel nut right there. They all have them. And this prevents the swivel nut from falling in here when you take out the lug. Otherwise, it would fall in and you'd be kind of screwed, You'd literally have to take off the head, unscrew the lug, push this back up, and then, it'd be a pain. So they put that little piece of metal there. So it just holds it up. Now, I was looking at that and thinking, well, eventually that thing might rust away, and some of them have started to rust. So I might have to eventually, depending on I'll keep an eye on it, but depending on how they do, I'll either put a spring inside there, or I could actually just put a spring inside there and that would be fine. But or I could put a piece of, I was thinking like bubble wrap inside there to just keep it up, because eventually I could also change the swivel nut. But when I do that, I was thinking, this swivel nut is so thick. You can see the square there. Most swivel nuts are not like that. I'm talking about that little, if I can move it, you can see what the bottom end of the butt end of the swivel nut. So if it eventually breaks, that butt end won't break, but this ring might break, eventually might rust out, and I'll put either bubble wrap or a spring or something, but I'm not really concerned about it right now. Anyway, I was really concerned about just the gauge of this metal, and it's totally good for what I'm going to use it for. Unless you're like cranking it like crazy and just stupid, it's totally fine. Even if the chrome peels off, I can even re-chrome them. This is, it's great. So this is what the beaver tail Rogers Big R drum lug looks like. And it's not every day you get to see the inside of that thing. There it is again. Okay. It's very, very strong and not too strong, but it definitely will serve its purpose really well. I put on new screws because the old ones, this drum I got off of a thing called Le Bon Coin in France. It's kind of like eBay's Bon Coin. France's eBay, just for France. And so I found it, and the guy had it, and it was originally all in a red wrap. So these are all the love. This is a strainer. Right. I was also concerned with the tension rods because they weren't all the same. The guy had just put whatever worked. I was like, wow, what am I going to do? Because those tension rods, this is the tension rod, right? Sometimes they're too big, they're too small. The lengths are really important because I'm working with a 14 by 10 inch. 14 by 10. I never even actually, I'm pretty sure it's a 10. It could be 11. Pretty sure it's 10. The distance, this was originally a tom, so that on the toms, the lug is a little lower than it might be on a snare drum. So I have to have larger tension rods, and the diameter of this has to fit into the old swivel nut. Turns out that on beaver tail lugs, Rogers, note it well, that they take the standard tension rod size, which is 7/32. And if that's wrong, pretty sure it's 7/32. If that's wrong, I'm messing up on might be messing up on the number, but no, I'm pretty sure that's right. Anyway, it's the standard one. Some of them are a little too large on different kits. I think the DWs, on some of them, they're larger. But you can find tension rods with Gretsch or Slingerland or all the standard lugs that are used today. Most of them. I got a pack of Gibraltars. They work perfectly well. Awesome. There's not even a little bit of slack in the threads. You can feel sometimes when it's too small that you move it, you block the swivel nut and you move it a little bit, and you can feel that the threads are not exactly the same dimension as the threads in the swivel nut. And this is not the case with the Gibraltar tension rods. They fit perfectly in this, so I was super happy about that. Incidentally, it's so funny because most drums have 8 lugs or they have 10 lugs, and when they sell the tension rods, they come in a pack of 6. So talk about forcing you to buy more than you need. I had to get, well, it's not that big of a deal, but you do have to search out the packs because some of them they only sell packs of 2, some of them sell packs of 4. I ended up getting 3 packs of 6 tension rods, so I'm gonna have 2 left over. It's no big deal. I'll use them on my other drums. But anyway, they could easily just sell most of them sell in packs of 4 or just sell in packs of 8. I needed 8 and 8, 16. So I ended up buying 18. Anyway, so this is the beaver tail lug. So you have to take all these off, and I seriously needed to rework the shell. So these are the beaver tail lugs. I got a whole bunch here. Right. Now, I have in the past tried to restore lugs and made a colossal error in the past using vinegar to get all the erosion, the corrosion out of there, the rust and stuff. And if you can do it, and it works, but the vinegar is unbelievably strong. Vinegar will destroy a lot of stuff if you let it sit there too long. and it started to, on old lugs, the other lugs that I have, it started to peel off the chrome, and it actually, I was not waiting for this. It actually, I'm going to take this out. It started to corrode the inside. The vinegar actually will destroy the inside of that. There's no protection or chrome or anything, and it started to break it apart on some other lugs that I use. So vinegar, you got to be very careful with vinegar. It's a wonderful thing to use to clean, but if you let it sit too long in the vinegar, it'll destroy your lugs. And lugs are very, very expensive, especially these ones. I found that WD-40 is just a wonderful. It's a wonderful compromise to take away the rust and to protect the lug and the swivel nut and everything. What was I going to say? I was thinking about saying something else with the WD-40 and the vinegar. I don't know. It'll come to me. What was I going to say about that? I forget. It'll come to me. Anyway, on the tom, right? This is the tom system. This is the way the way that the tom is mounted onto the drum. I'm not going to use this. I'll probably sell it back. But this part goes into the drum like that, and then this is a major. It's super heavy duty. I mean, you can see the inside of this thing, right? It's really, really heavy, and it has just a screw that locks in. That locks the bar. And this, obviously, they got rid of this. It's cool, but after a while, the screw's going to break, or the threads in there, it's going to stretch or something. And especially if you're using it a lot, it's just the thing that's become outdated, and they use a lot of other stuff now. One of the best ones, it's not the swivel ball. One of the best ones is a clamp. And when you work in carpentry and you work in simple, mechanics, that clamp is number one. There's Gibraltar has them. Now most companies do that. So essentially, you have a metal plate. The bar comes up, and then it just clamps on, and you tighten the clamp with a nut and bolt. So if anything breaks, you can change it out, and it's just there's more metal squeezing around the bar, and that's the way to do it. I have it on my toms. My floor tom legs are with clamps now. That's the way. The swivel ball is cool. It came out a long time ago, and it originally was in metal. And Rogers is one of the first companies. Again, the unsung hero for a lot of stuff. Rogers Hardware, they were the first ones to come out with a memory lock, which most people don't talk about that anymore. It's kind of a standard thing on all drums, memory locks. And what do those do? Those are, you put them in place, and then when you take down your drums, the memory locks are there. So when you put them back, you just drop the bars into the memory locks, and you're good to go. You don't have to rework the heights of things and the positions of things, because the memory lock remembers where you put it. That's the whole purpose. Rogers came out with that. Awesome. Rogers also came out with the swivel ball. Total unsung hero. It's basically on their hardware, you have the stand and a metal ball, and then the screw, so you can literally put this in any position you want and tighten it down, and there you go. This was another Rogers innovation, the swivel ball in their stands. Awesome. I mean, just really great stuff, and now everybody uses it. They use it in tom suspension systems, mounting systems. They use it in cymbal stands, carbon fiber balls, all over the place. Rogers came out with that stuff first. Another thing now, getting on to, these are the tension rods, the lugs, the mounting system. The drum I'm going to show you here, the drum I've been working on, is a Rogers Big R. Here is, I managed to take off without destroying it or bending it or anything. The sticker, this is a sticker, the classic one. Now, Rogers, what's the deal with this? Rogers still exists. I think Yamaha bought them. They were bought by CBS along with Fender for a while, and then it changed hands, you know. And the Big R came out in 1975, and since then, now you'll see Rogers. It's not made in USA, and that changes a lot. If you need to find the ones, the real ones, the vintage ones, it says made, it's USA right there. Right? And in 1975, you can see, if you have a 1975 one, the first of the Big R, because the serial number is only 5 digits long. Check it out. See the serial? You got a D, and then you got those 5 digits. Now this one, I was so just freaking in love, because I discovered that this one it's one of the first 1,000 ever made of the Rogers Big R drum. And this one says 781. This is the 81st drum of the Big R, made in the USA. So I managed to take this out, and also the air hole. So I'm going to put this all back in, etc. Very careful so I don't bust so I don't bust this. Super careful. All of it's all in a state of fragile. Just gotta be careful. Actually, I'm gonna leave that in now that I put that in. Another innovation that Rogers, here's the shell. Dun, 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 there it is. Now, I've been working on this thing for 2 weeks. It was in red, and I looked at it and I was like, should I take this off? I've done this before. Oh, it's going to be hell. It's going to make marks all over the wood. I'm going to have to sand it for hours and days, and was not looking into it. Looking forward to it. 2 weeks. I lucked out being able to take off the drum with an iron. I was looking at it one night and peeling away a little bit, and realized that I was able to take it off with an iron instead of with a chisel, and just scraping it off. Because if you do that, you're going to destroy the surface, and this is what everybody's going to see. So you can't just go at it with the chisel. You're going to make marks all over the place. And in the past, when that had happened to me, I bought plies and replied the drum, which you can do. And I was always in the back of my mind saying, if I can't manage to get off the cover cleanly, I know where to go here in France. It's called Topwood, and you get plies, and I would reply it myself. And I know how to do that in an apartment. I wish I had a garage or something to work on this, but I know how to do it with the means that I have. Anyway, so I managed to take it all off. This big hole here, this is where the mounting system originally went in, right? It's still, right? I was thinking about what to do about this. Cover it up, fill it in, put a wooden patch, a design here, I eventually said, no, I am just going to leave it as it is. It's going to be a giant air hole, and that's it. And I'm going to get metal grommets. I found them, put in there a nice metal grommet to protect the plies so the moisture doesn't seep in through this part of the drum and peel up the wood over time. So I found that and wait for that to come in the mail. And I'm just going to leave it as it is. Now, that I'm not too concerned about that. I mean, the look, I don't care. But it will affect how the drum is played, because when you have the air hole serves for the pressure in the drum. If there's a small air hole or no air hole, the pressure is always going to be intense. And when you hit the drum, because the air it can't escape, it's going to it's going to put a lot of pressure back on the head, which means that the stick, no matter how I tune this, the stick is going to bounce off the head more importantly than if there was an air hole. In the case that there is a large air hole, that means that the stick is going to fall into the head. It's going to stay on the head a little longer than it normally would with a small air hole, which I tend to like. I find that heads that bounce too much, it's unnatural, and I just don't like it. I don't dig it. Like on drum pads, sometimes the bounce is just way too crazy, and it's not even close to what a real drum is, unless you're playing on a marching drum, a Kevlar head. So this is going to be so cool for me. And there's another company out there that does air holes like this large. So it's not uncommon. Pork pie has a large air hole. There's also, I don't know if there are any Ludwig people out there, but there's a Ludwig snare drum that literally it has the shell isn't complete. There's one strip here, and I think another strip. There's definitely another strip there, and there might be one in the middle, or maybe not. I think they just put one strip here and one strip here, and the whole center part there's nothing. So obviously that drum, when you hit the head, the stick is going to stay on the head longer than any drum you've ever played. So it's not uncommon. This one though is going to, I think, it's going to be perfect. Now, what's so cool? Here's the thing. I had to take it all off. All the red, right? All the holes are intact. Look at this. I mean, it's just so awesome. Now, Rogers, what is this? This is a combination, the big R's, 1975. They're a combination of birch wood and maple wood. There's a lot of discussion about poplar and mahogany, I've heard, and no. From what I've investigated, it's maple and birch plies. 5-ply, 1975, 5-ply, maple birch. And they also have the reinforcement rings, which you see these things on both ends. You can see it back here, right? Both ends. See that? You can see them right there. Now that's super cool. I love it. I love reinforcement rings because it increases the bearing edge, the fatness that the snare drum is going to have right there. It increases it. If it was just 5 plies, you'd have a very small bearing edge. This makes it behave kind of like it's a 10-ply. Technically, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're looking at what was a 5-ply with the reinforcement rings becomes a 9-ply interaction with the head, which is awesome. It's so awesome. It's going to give a wonderful fat sound. Now, the question is that I was saying to myself, well, why would I do this? I'll just buy one today, and a 14 by 10, and that's it, and and the difference in money is not going to be that big of a deal. And now, you know why? It's because I said to myself, I'm going to do this. I want to find the right wood. I want to find the right company, etc. Rogers drums, 1975. There's a few things that are great about this. They're supposed to be Keller wood, which is what DW now uses. I don't know how long DW has been using Keller wood, but I think, I'm not sure where Keller is. I want to say Massachusetts, but I could be completely wrong about that. Don't take my advice on that. But anyway, Keller wood is supposed to be, in America anyway, one of the best plies for drums. And this is. And the fact that it's 1975 in Keller woods means that the wood is even older than that. So the wood has dried. It's like old wine. It has dried. It has lived through life, and that all contributes to a wonderful, warm, powerful sound of the drum. Brand new drums, like brand new shoes. You got to wear them in. Same thing with cymbals. They all sound pristine and unbelievable in the beginning, but actually over time, hitting them changes the sound slightly, and and the same thing with drums and wood. So the older the wood, the better, in which this is the case. Now, there was the reinforcement ring at one spot was coming off, which is not a problem. I know how to work with a little bit I have some carpentry skills. So I glued it back. It was coming off, I think, just right here. You can't even see it, okay? But it was just peeling off. It's just like the wood, the glue had given away. So I have some clamps and wood glue and put it back. Not a problem. It was only about maybe like that much peeling up. So obviously can't play with that. So I fixed that. Took off inside the old Rogers, these drums. There was a gray paint. That's customary to a lot of drums of the time. I don't know why they chose gray, but it looked cool. But I wanted to see the wood, and that gray, it was also peeling off, and any kind of cleaning up I would have done to it, it just wouldn't have looked as nice as this does. So I took it off. Now, how do you do that? Well, I'm telling you by experience. I've done all kinds. I've scraped it off. I've used the metal wire brush, sanded it. When you want to do this, you got to put on a mask, but the best thing is to get, not with the cover. The cover, if you're lucky, you can heat it up and pull it off with an iron, and you won't destroy the wood. Because you have to be very careful not to destroy this wood, because this is what people are going to see. This is what you're going to see. So if you make any mistakes, you're going to live with it for the rest of your life. So it's kind of like, should I sand it again? Yes, okay, I will. And get it down to something nice. So for the past 2 weeks here, I've been using acetone to take off the glue, and I've used metal, not metal, it takes off paint. It's a very thick gel. You put it on the paint, and it gets under the paint and lifts it up. And then you scrape it off with like a tile spatula, So I did that. Obviously, going with the grain when you scrape it off, because you can seriously make marks and all those kind of marks. It's an art form to do this. It's not just a mechanical thing, because you really have to pay attention to the surface of the wood, and not destroy it, not destroy the bearing edge. So I've been doing that, and then I put a veneer lacquer on this twice. And I was looking at it after it dried, and I was like, what is going on with this? It's like I'm pretty sure that that it was cool. What's going on? And you can't see it from a far away like this. You're looking at it, but when you get up real close, and especially when you look at this angle, people look at the finishes and they just look at it straight like this. No, you have to look at it as the sun or light comes down like this. You see, you can't see it like this, but you see the lines, and you see how the veneer and the lacquers, how it dried and stuff. And it was minute, like minuscule. Like it looked like it had clumped up a little bit. And from a meter away, you couldn't see it. A foot away, you couldn't see it. But when you got real close, you could see it. And it was making me so mad because I'd already put so much time into it. I eventually, I wanted to use the paint thinner to pull it off again. But I was so afraid because that's so strong. And I'd already used it a lot. It had already gone through a lot of baths. And I was afraid that it might start to really destroy the shell. So I had to go with a sander, which I hated. I was doing it and I was like crying while I was doing it because the sander, I'm not in a professional, garage here or whatever. And it put swirls all over the place. And I was just like, I can't believe I just did this. And so, but I had to get the minute glue that was stuck all over the place, and I was afraid to use any more products, chemical products, to destroy the wood. And also, as you do, but how should I say it? As you're sanding stuff, another problem is you could sand a ply down, or you could sand a little bit of the ply and start seeing the second ply, which it's really dangerous. And if you do that, you cannot fix that. You can try and cover it up a little bit, but that would be such a pain in the butt to do. So I was just like, this is just, I'm going to, 2 weeks. Finally, so I sanded it all down, all those minute little pieces of glue, after having done a ton of paint thinner and acetone, which is nail polish, takes it off. And then to get all the swirls off, I used 40 grade, started with 40 grade sandpaper and water. And that's so unbelievably beautiful to do when you see it work. The water in wood will lift up the marks and then you sand them off. And it's just, you see it, and I would like save my life. I was just like, I love it, But again, you got to be careful because you want to be careful with the water too, because you don't want to lift off, destroy the wood, right? It'll lift off stuff. So I had to re-glue certain spots and everything, put the glue back in. Nothing was cracked or broken, but you got to be careful. So little by little by little. And so I went from 40 grade to, I didn't have any other thing, but I went 40 grade to 100 grade to 150 grade to 240 grade sandpaper. And little by little, you slowly take away the lines. Now, sanding, it's so important when you sand stuff to look at it like it's a piece of art, because you're basically making lines on the drum. Sanding is lines, and you want to go with the grain. If you're sanding, like, this is you, and you want to make sure that as you sand, you're going with the grain. So it's an incredible amount of attention to make sure you're going with the grain. And if you go like this, you'll see it. If you go and when you finish and go like that, you'll see it. So you have to constantly and look at this way, not like this, right? You won't see it like that. So you sand it. And eventually you get to a place where you're happy with what you're seeing. I don't have a special sander. I'm not in a garage, so I have to, at some point you got to say, okay, enough is enough. I'm happy with this, with the way it is. I'll deal with what, but there are no swirls, which is what I I really wanted to get rid of because that would be so embarrassing, and I couldn't live with playing a drum and seeing it all over the place all the time. I'd get so mad at myself because once you put the lacquer on, you have to sand it all back down and to get the swirls and use the grade of sandpaper that made the swirls to get them out. So like I had 40 grade sandpaper, made swirls. I had used 40 grade sandpaper to get it out. You can sit there and do 150 all day long. It will never get it out. And again, water sanding is the beautiful, beautiful experience. So little by little, and then you change and put the new one on, and then you change and put the new one on, and you slowly get something where all of the lines are with the grain. And you can see them. This is it's fresh. There's nothing on the drum. There's nothing. There is. Now this was something I wasn't anticipating, but it's not a big deal. I don't care. I like that actually. It was initially covered, wrapped. So one of the things was saying like, what is this going to look like underneath? It's going to be crap, you know. I lucked out and I learned these big R drums underneath this beautiful wood. There was also, they had done this. You can't see it because I sanded it. It just, I lucked out. There's a strip here. It goes around like this, comes around, and then there's another one. Now, not all the way through the drum. There's, I don't know what they did on the interior plies, but through the sanding and going with the grain, that strip eventually disappears. So I was so happy about that. I was so happy. I was thinking about putting another strip here to cover it up. I don't need to. It just went away. You can't even see it. So beautiful. One of the wonderful things also that I learned about the unsung hero Rogers drums is that they were one of the first companies to take the shell, like my Premier Janistas, which they were one of the first, I guess in the 90s, to really tell everybody what they were doing with this. They made the shell slightly smaller, one of the first, innovation with Rogers, slightly smaller than the actual standard head. So what happens is the head goes down, and instead of being too tight and snug all around the rim, there's a little space there. And this allows the head to float on top of the rim, which helps you in the tuning process. It helps the life of the drum head. And Rogers was one of the first to do it. Again, we don't talk about Rogers enough in the drum industry. If you're playing drums today, you are benefiting from a lot of the innovations that were made with Rogers drums. My Premier Janista drums did the same shell thing where it's smaller, so that they I think were a little bit more drastic on the size. I think 5/8 smaller in diameter, so the head literally floats. You can see when you look down this way. When you put the head on, you look down between the rim and the wood. You can see the space. And the Janistas, they resonate like crazy. They're wonderful, wonderful big drums. Wonderful. I remember years later, after I had gotten my Janistas, I was late 90s. Virgil Donati came out with one of his solo videos, and he was using the same Premier Janistas that I had, and I was like, "Oh, that's it," and I knew it because I spent probably a year looking into all of the companies of the time in the 90s or mid 90s, which ones were, in my opinion, the best. And the most innovative. And I love that kind of stuff. I love being a part of the history of the drums that I'm playing and knowing what it's all about. So the inside I'm going to leave like this. I did lacquer it, or veneer. I put a veneer so it protects it. it'll seal in all the moisture and to keep the moisture out. There's a little bit of marking, you can see, I can't get the drum to turn, you can see a little bit of brown, which is the rust and the metal that has seeped into the wood. It's not a big deal. The bearing edge, as I'm looking at this, the bearing edge is also innovative because it doesn't just come up and then down. This is one of the classic new kind of bearing edges that they were doing in the 70s, where the bearing edge is 45 degrees, and I want to say Rogers did that, but I'm not sure who. Gretsch is a baseball bat kind of thing, and not all of them, obviously, but I think Rogers was the first one to start to say 45 degrees on this bearing edge right there. And what's cool about this one is they came back. There's a little, maybe 2 millimeters where they sand back down this way. So it's 45 this way and then 2 down like that. So the head, I guess, is it has a fine line that it sits on, and when you compress it, when you tighten it, it really makes a seamless joint around the entire drum, which is better than having it flat. I guess because it just doesn't, that little space, I guess, adds like, it behaves like a cushion, and as the head is gently wrapped around the drum instead of like cut like that. Which brings me to another thing, is I have to sand the bed of the strainer, and I've picked spots here already. There's a blue mark right there and one over here, based on where I want the strainer versus where, in comparison to this, and where the R is going to be and everything, and here and here. So I have to sand this down just here and here for the strainer to go over. Why? Because when you do that, the head, you have to be careful, but it's because of the strainer. When you sand down the bed here, right there, and the strainer is going to, like the head, it's going to basically wrap around the wood instead of being like this, which means that if you haven't sanded this down, the strainer is literally gonna, you can tighten it all you want, but it's never gonna really sink into the head. Rogers incidentally came out with something called Dynasonic, which had a system contrary to using this bed thing. Had a system where it was always tight, and it just went, and you just lowered it down, and perfectly on the head, and it's a beautiful sound. The only problem that I dislike about it is it tends to create, the mechanics of that strainer is really big. It'd be like that. It'd be really, really, large here, and to put it in a bag and stuff, and carry it around, it's cumbersome. I'd be afraid of it breaking. So I am, however, going to get the original Swivel-matic swivel strainer that Rogers came out with. It's supposed to be one of the best strainers ever. They actually say that in their advertisements. This is the best one ever. It's a ball bearing time clock or clock strainer. You'll see coming up in another video. I'm going to add, this is going to be a very long video. I wanted to do the first one like this to show you what it looks like. This is after 2 weeks of working on it, cleaning it all up, mostly making sure that I didn't destroy the appearance and the texture of the top of this, the exterior ply, and getting all of the grain, all of the lines that I made with the sanding to go in the direction of the grain, so it looks good. And I plan on, this could change, but I plan on doing light matte veneer over top of this. I don't want it to be brilliant, flashy, and that's it. So wait till you see what this is going to be when it's all done. Unfreaking believable. Rogers, big R. I'm converting a 14-inch by, I want to say, 10. I want to say 10. I think it might actually be more than that, but I want to say 10. It's going to be freaking amazing. Get ready. So, I'm going to just start the next video right on top of this one. So this is going to be like almost like a 2-hour thing I think I'm going to be doing here with this Rogers drum. I want to show you this before I actually put all the hardware and before I put all the lacquer, the veneer and the heads and the strainer and all that stuff. I wanted to show you what it looks like, especially it's not every day you get to see the inside of these beaver tail lugs. And that's it. So more coming soon. Stay with me. Check out what this is going to be. Big R 1975 Rogers drum. Ciao.